They always knew. They always felt it. But they pretended it was nothing. They watched you. They laughed. They tried to confuse you. But deep down, a part of them always knew the truth about you. And now, everything has changed. They're no longer just suspicious. They're terrified. You don't have to do anything. The simple truth is already destroying them. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how some people look at you in a strange way? As if they're trying to hide something? As if they know something about you? Something you don't even understand yet? This is not just in your head. It never was. Time has passed, and now there's no way to hide it anymore. They know. And worse, they know that you know. The game has changed, and the question is no longer whether you will find out, but rather, what you will do with this truth. Because there's something you haven't realized yet, and once you understand it, it will be too late to turn back. The signs were always there, but you ignored them. Not because you wanted to, but because they made you believe there was nothing wrong. Small details went unnoticed, a glance that lasted a second too long, a sudden silence when you walked into the room, a polite smile, too polite, forced, carrying something you couldn't quite decipher. Deep down, something always felt off. You've felt it, haven't you? That sensation that something was out of place, but you just couldn't explain what. You walked into rooms where conversations stopped abruptly. They treated you with courtesy, but there was something in the way they spoke, a hesitation, a failed attempt to hide their discomfort. For a long time, you thought it was just your imagination, but now you can feel it. Something has changed. The same people who once treated you with indifference now watch you with silent unease. They avert their gaze too quickly. They hesitate before speaking to you, as if they've realized something that terrifies them. They know that you've noticed, and that is the real reason for their fear. They thought they could hide it forever, that they could pretend nothing was happening. But the truth is, from the very beginning, they always knew who you were. The only difference now is that you know it too. And that change, that simple shift, has made their whole world crumble. Now, watch closely. You'll notice it. Small gestures that once went unnoticed. People who used to confront you now keep their distance. Others who once ignored you now watch you in silence. Some try to act as if nothing has changed, but deep inside, they know something is different. Because while you were distracted, believing everything was normal, they already knew the truth about you. The truth is, these signs were always there. Since childhood, in school, at work, in the most ordinary moments of daily life. You never fully fit in. You never went unnoticed. Even when you tried to stay in the background, something about you always stood out. If you pay attention, you'll realize that even strangers have looked at you differently. You've felt it before. That eerie sensation of being in a public place and realizing that someone is watching you. No reason. No explanation. As if they were trying to decipher something about you. And it has always been this way. Since the earliest years of your life, the people around you noticed something, but they never told you what it was. Do you remember your childhood? The times when adults looked at you with a hint of surprise? Or when other children treated you differently for no apparent reason? Many times you thought something was wrong with you. Maybe you tried to change, to fit in, to become invisible. But somehow, that was never possible. No matter how much you tried, people still noticed you, and some of them were afraid of it. The real question isn't just what they saw in you, it's what they've always known and never wanted to tell you. From the very beginning, they knew. But no one ever said a word. On the contrary, they did everything to make sure you never realized it. They created distractions, planted doubts, made you believe you were overreacting, that it was all in your imagination. But now you feel it. Time has passed, and no matter how hard they try to pretend, they can't hide it anymore. There has always been something different about you, something that unsettled them. But instead of talking about it, they chose silence. They chose the exchanged glances, the sudden change of subject, the discomfort they tried to disguise, but that was always there. And you noticed. Even when you didn't fully understand why, you always felt that something was being kept from you. Think carefully. Have you ever noticed how some people act strangely when you arrive? As if your mere presence is enough to shift their behavior? Some get nervous. Others become guarded. Some try to treat you naturally, but there's something forced about their gestures, their tone, the way they look at you. It's as if they're waiting to see what you'll do. as if they need to make sure you still haven't figured out what's going on. But the truth is, this time, you have figured it out. For years, they tested you. They set challenges, placed you in situations to gauge your reactions. Sometimes, they made it seem like they were in control, like you were just another person, like none of this mattered. But now that you know this game exists, the rules have changed. For years, they played a subtle game, exchanged glances, small tests, forced conversations trying to extract something from you. They needed to know how much you understood. They had to be sure you were still in the dark. But now, something is out of their control, and you didn't change. They did. You feel it, don't you? The way some people can no longer hide their discomfort when you're around. The hesitant tone of voice, the pauses that last too long in a conversation, the desperate attempt to act like nothing is happening. But something is happening. Because before, they had time. They could watch you, manipulate you, test you without rush. But now, the clock is working against them. What they've always feared is finally happening. You are seeing everything, and that terrifies them. People who once felt in control are now making mistakes. Small cracks in the mask that once seemed flawless. Responses that used to be automatic now come with a second of hesitation. Expressions that once radiated confidence now reveal fractures. Because before, they believed you didn't know. Now, they know that you do. And when control slips from the hands of those who always thought they were in charge, fear becomes unstoppable. But it's not just fear, it's the shift in how they see you. Before, you were predictable, someone they could study, test, manipulate. But now, you are an unpredictable variable. They don't know how much you've noticed. They don't know how much you've understood. They don't know what you might do next. And that uncertainty is consuming them. That's why, suddenly, some people have completely changed their behavior around you. Some who used to be cold now try to be friendly. Others who once tried to get close now avoid you entirely. The game that was once subtle is now broken. And that is proof that something big is about to happen. You're no longer reacting the way they expected. You no longer fit into their game. You don't show fear. You don't let them confuse you. You don't fall for the same traps. And that terrifies them. They tried to mold you to fit their version of reality, but they failed. Because now you know that this reality was never yours. The game they played with you no longer works. And now, they don't know what to do. Because the truth they worked so hard to bury is now standing right in front of them. And their worst nightmare has come true. You are seeing everything. They tried. They tried every possible way. At first, they ignored you, pretended you weren't different, acted as if nothing was happening, as if you were just another face in the crowd. When they realized that wasn't working, they started testing you. They asked strange questions, put you in uncomfortable situations, tried to trap you in conversations that seemed innocent but carried hidden intentions, all to make you doubt yourself, hesitate, second-guess what you felt, but it didn't work. So they moved to the next stage. They used doubt against you, tried to convince you it was all in your head, that you were imagining things, that you were being paranoid, that you were seeing patterns where none existed, but you kept seeing. They wanted to confuse you, to make you believe that everything was just your imagination. But the opposite happened. The more they tried to blind you, the clearer you saw. And that's when something in them changed. For the first time, they realized they couldn't stop you. Because unlike what they expected, you didn't fall for the traps. You didn't let them control your perception. And worse, you started seeing what had always been hidden. Now they can't pretend you don't notice. They can't manipulate your reactions anymore. They lost control. And when someone who always thought they were in charge loses control, fear becomes inevitable. Have you noticed how lately some people have drastically changed the way they speak to you? Some, who once carried themselves with superiority, now seem nervous around you. Others, who used to engage in psychological games, now avoid eye contact and sidestep any confrontation. This isn't coincidence. It's their desperation showing. Because now, the truth they feared the most has become real. You can no longer be manipulated. The tricks that once worked against you are now useless. The words that once held power over you are now empty. But something even deeper is happening here. Because it's not just their fear that has grown. Have you noticed how some of these people have started acting unpredictably? Some who once attacked you now seem to want to get closer. Others, who once pretended to be allies, now pull away in silence, without explanation. They've realized something they won't admit out loud. You were never under their control. It was them who were always trying to protect themselves from you. And now, you don't need to ask anymore. You don't need to search for answers. You already know. The difference is, now you have the power of choice. For the first time, you don't need to react, because they already understand they can't stop you anymore. The game is over, and for the first time, you know that you've won. The only question that remains is, what will you do with this truth? Have you noticed? The atmosphere shifts when you walk into a room. Conversations that once flowed naturally become tense. Laughter that once sounded genuine now feels forced. Some look away too quickly. Others try to act as if nothing has changed, but you feel it. The energy shifts. They try to hide it, but their bodies betray them. Restless hands, a trembling voice, shallow breaths, a slight step back, almost imperceptible, but not to you. The discomfort is undeniable. Your presence no longer goes unnoticed. Before, they tested you. Now, they study you. Before, they wanted to make you doubt. Now, they want to understand how you figured it out. But what terrifies them the most isn't just what you know. It's how unshaken you are. You've realized that you no longer need to explain yourself. You don't need to react. You don't need to defend yourself. Because now, silence works in your favor. They speak. They try to justify, but they know their words no longer hold power over you. Because you see beyond them, you read the gestures, you recognize the patterns, you understand what is being said without a single word. And that, more than anything, is what terrifies them. And while they still try to manipulate, you have already understood something they never even imagined. True power is not in what is said. It is in what doesn't need to be said. You feel how they hesitate before approaching, how they misstep when trying to interact with you. Some test a friendlier approach, desperately trying to regain their lost sense of control. Others simply withdraw, as if running away is their only option. But no matter what they do, they can't reach you anymore. And that is the real reason why your presence unsettles them so much now. You haven't changed. What changed is their perception of you. Because now they know that you see everything, and above all, they know that nothing they do can change that. But the worst part for them? You don't need to do anything. Your mere presence alone already destabilizes them. That's why some try to avoid you, others to challenge you. Some try to start small conversations, dropping hints to gauge how much you know. But all of them, without exception, feel that something has slipped out of their control. The game has flipped. Now, they are the ones feeling watched. And that is the real reason for their discomfort. They know that sooner or later, the truth will come to light. And they know that when that happens, you will be the last person they can deceive. But there is something that haunts them even more. They know you've already figured it all out. And they know there is nothing more they can do, because the next move is entirely up to you. For so long, they believed they were in control. They thought they were always one step ahead, that you would never see the game unfolding around you. But the game was never theirs. From the very beginning, every test they put you through, every subtle manipulation, every attempt to make you doubt yourself, it all failed. They just didn't realize it at the time. They thought they were leading you, shaping you, trapping you in an invisible web. But now they know they were only playing against their own fate. Because the truth is undeniable. You were never under their control. What was once a silent game has now become an undeniable defeat for them. They can no longer influence you. They can no longer test you. They can no longer predict your next move. And that, more than anything else, is what terrifies them the most. They lost. But the most unsettling part for them is this: you never had to fight to win. They tried everything. They used subtle tactics, created scenarios where you would unknowingly expose yourself. But you stood firm. You never reacted the way they expected. And in doing so, they lost themselves within their own game. Now look at what has happened. The rules they created no longer work. The strategies they once relied on have become meaningless. They don't know what to do anymore. And the worst part? They can't just walk away. They invested so much time, so much effort, so much control, and now it's all slipping through their fingers. That's why some of them still try. Have you noticed? Some try to act as if nothing has changed. They repeat the same old tactics, clinging to the illusion that they still stand a chance. But you feel it. You feel it. You perceive it. Their game is over. And now there is one undeniable truth. You know. And they know you know. They still watch you. But it's different now. Not with the confidence of those who think they hold the reins, but with the silent fear of those who have realized too late that they never did. They played, they bet everything, and they lost, without even realizing when it happened. But there is something even more unsettling for them, because to lose a game means that someone else has won. And the question that haunts them now isn't just, how did this happen? It's the realization that even now, they still don't understand when everything slipped out of their control. And that means only one thing. You won before you even realized you were playing. And now they know there's nothing they can do to change that. The game is over, and they can't go back. For all this time, you thought their goal was to stop you, that their game was about keeping you in the dark, leading you astray, making you doubt who you really are. But now, the truth finally reveals itself. They never wanted to stop you. They needed you. And that changes everything. Think about it. If they truly wanted to stop you, why were they never direct? Why did they always act from the shadows, testing you, watching you, dropping hints, creating confusing situations? If they really wanted to eliminate you from the game, wouldn't they have done so from the very beginning? But they didn't. They never did. Because deep down, they couldn't. They needed to keep you close. They needed to see how far you would go. They needed to know if you would awaken completely. And now that you have, they don't know what to do anymore. You feel it, don't you? Their gaze is no longer one of opposition. It's a gaze of expectation, of fear and need all at once. Because what they always tried to hide was never the fact that you were a threat to them. It was the fact that without you, they would have never gotten this far. But why? What is it about you that keeps them so close, even as they pretend to push you away? The answer is simple. They need your energy. Since the beginning, your presence has been their point of reference. They tested you not because they wanted to break you, but because they needed to understand something about you, something they never could achieve themselves. And now that you've freed yourself from their game, they are lost. Because without you, they have no direction. They pushed you, challenged you, placed obstacles in your path, not to stop you, but to force you to go beyond. And you did. The problem is, now you don't need them anymore, but they still need you. And that is the truth they never wanted to admit. Because now that you see everything, you have something they never will, something they would do anything to reclaim. Do you see? Now it all makes sense. The strange glances, the unexpected questions, the disguised tests. It was never about eliminating you. It was always about absorbing something from you. Because the truth is, while they made you doubt yourself, they were trying to understand how you remained unshaken. But now, they know. They realize they can't manipulate you anymore. And more than that, they realize they can't move forward without you. And that realization terrifies them more than anything else. Because now, they need your validation. They need you to keep playing. They need you to believe you are still part of this game. But now, you know the truth. The game no longer needs you. You decide whether it continues or if it ends right now. And that is what terrifies them the most. Because you were always the key. And now you are the only one who can decide if everything crumbles or stays standing. And now, the game is over. You realize that you have always had something that others didn't. They studied you because they needed to understand it. They challenged you because they needed to see how far it would go. But there is one thing they never expected, that you would truly see. Because now that you have, they can't pretend anymore. They know that you know, and for the first time, they can't hold you back anymore. The truth is that all along you were the most important piece on this board. But now, for the first time, you are no longer just a piece. Now you decide whether the game continues or if it ends right here. And that is the truth that has always been right in front of you. Have you noticed how everything feels different now? How the weight that once pressed on you has disappeared? Because now, you are no longer bound by their rules. Before, everything felt uncertain. You knew something was wrong, but no one spoke about it. Now, you see it clearly. Now, all the pieces fit together. You were always different, always had something others didn't. But for years, they tried to convince you that this was a flaw. They made you believe that being different was a problem. But the truth is something else entirely. They always saw your strength, long before you did. They tested you because they needed to know if it was real. They tried to confuse you because if you saw the truth too soon, the game would have ended before it was time. But now, there is no turning back. You have awakened. You see beyond what they tried to hide. And that is their greatest fear. Because now, you are free. And there is nothing in this world that terrifies them more than someone who can no longer be controlled. But there is something even more important. Now that you see everything clearly, you will never be able to look at the world the same way again. The doubts that once haunted you are gone. The confusion that once clouded your mind has vanished. What remains now is only one undeniable truth. You were always greater than you imagined, and nothing they do can ever change that. But now, one last question arises. If this truth was always right in front of you, what else is still hidden? Because if the game was built on blinding you, how many other layers of illusion still exist? What else do they not want you to discover? Now that you have seen this, there is no turning back. A new journey begins. And this time, you will not just be an observer. You will be the one who chooses the path. Because what you have seen so far was only the surface. And what is about to be revealed could change everything. For your entire life, the answers were always right in front of you. You felt, you sensed, you questioned, yet somehow, something was always pulling you back. As if, at the very last moment before the truth, a fog would rise, making you doubt. Now that fog has lifted, and for the first time you see everything with absolute clarity. Every moment they doubted you, every time they made you feel out of place, every look that seemed to say something but was never explained. None of it was coincidence. It was all a game. But now that you see, it all seems obvious. It was always there. Do you remember when you felt something strange about the way people looked at you? As if they knew something about you that you didn't even know? You weren't imagining it. They always knew. Do you remember those moments when you were tested for no apparent reason? Unexpected questions, small challenges, situations that felt like disguised provocations. You weren't overreacting. It was always part of the game, and that is the truth that has always been right in front of you. Have you noticed how everything feels different now? How the weight that once pressed on you has disappeared? Because now, you are no longer bound by their rules. Before, everything felt uncertain. You knew something was wrong, but no one spoke about it. Now you see it clearly. Now all the pieces fit together. You were always different, always had something others didn't. But for years, they tried to convince you that this was a flaw. They made you believe that being different was a problem. But the truth is something else entirely. They always saw your strength long before you did. They tested you because they needed to know if it was real. They tried to confuse you because if you saw the truth too soon, the game would have ended before it was time. But now, there is no turning back. You have awakened. You see beyond what they tried to hide. And that is their greatest fear. Because now, you are free, and there is nothing in this world that terrifies us more than someone who can no longer be controlled. But now comes the final test. The moment every chosen one must face at some point in their journey. Because seeing the truth was only the first step. The real question is, what will you do with it? The world around you has changed, but something inside you has changed as well. You feel it, don't you? Before, you searched for answers, tried to understand what was happening behind the scenes, wanted to know why you were always treated differently. Now, you know. But knowing the truth is only the first step. The real challenge comes after. What will you do with this truth? This is the final test. Many reach this point and hesitate. Because seeing is one thing. Accepting the responsibility of who you truly are is something else entirely. This is where most people stop. They look at the truth, feel its weight, and in silence, choose to ignore it. Because truth requires courage. You can't go back to who you were before. You can't pretend you don't see. You might try, but something inside you will never allow it again. And this is the final test. Accept or retreat. This moment won't come with warnings. You won't hear a voice telling you that you are about to be tested. But one day, suddenly, something will happen. A challenge, a choice, a crossroads that will demand that you be everything you were born to be. And in that moment, you will know, this is the test. Everything that has happened so far has brought you to this point. Every pain, every doubt, every strange look, every attempt to make you believe you were wrong, all of it made you stronger. But none of that matters if, in the decisive moment, you do not choose to be who you truly are. Because this is the real purpose of everything that has happened. They tested you, not to defeat you, but to see if you were strong enough to reach this point. But there's one thing no one can do for you. No one can cross this door in your place. No one can make this choice for you. And now, the time has come to decide. The final test is not about them. It is not about the game, the lies, or the obstacles they placed in your path. The final test is about you. Now that everything has been revealed, who do you choose to be? The last obstacle stands before you, and beyond it, there is no turning back, only who you were born to become. Now tell me, are you ready? For your entire life, they made you believe that you were trapped in something greater, that invisible forces were manipulating you, that circumstances always put you at a disadvantage, that somehow the control was never in your hands. But now, you see, now the illusion has been destroyed. They tried to convince you that you were just a piece in a much larger game, that there would always be someone above, pulling the strings, dictating the rules. But what they never wanted you to discover is that no one was holding those strings but you. Because all along, it was you who created the path. Think about everything you have been through. Every obstacle, every test, every moment when it felt like the world was against you. And now look at where you are. If they truly had control, you wouldn't have made it this far. If they had all that power, you would still be blind, trapped in the same illusion. But you're not. You saw, you understood. You overcame every trap, every manipulation, every carefully constructed lie designed to make you doubt yourself. So stop and ask yourself, who really was in control this whole time? You could have given up. You could have accepted what they told you, followed the rules, fit into the box where they told you to belong. But you didn't. You questioned. You resisted. And that's why you are here now. The greatest truth they ever hid from you was never about them. It was about you. They never had control over you. They were merely obstacles on your path, and you passed through all of them. Every test, every challenge, every moment they tried to break you, you overcame it all for one reason: your own strength. And now, that strength is fully awake. They may continue trying to play, they may create new tactics, new illusions, but none of it matters anymore. Because now you know, and once the truth is seen, it can never be unseen. You were never a victim, you were never trapped, you were never just another piece in their game. You were always in control. And now that you see this with absolute clarity, there are no limits to where you can go. The game is over for them. Now, the rules are yours. Now, the path is yours. And whatever you do from this moment forward will be by your own choice. But there is something even deeper about this truth. They were never your masters. They were never your owners. They existed only as a reflection of what you did not yet know about yourself. The real game was never against them. It was against your own doubt. And now that you have conquered it, there are no more chains. There are no more barriers. There are no more fears. All that exists now is what you choose to do with this power. And this is the last thing they never wanted you to realize. The power was always yours. The destiny was always yours. And the next step is the first step into your new reality. Now that you see everything clearly, there is no turning back. You know who you are. You know that the control was always in your hands. And now the time has come to mark this turning point in your journey. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Declare this truth in the comments and become part of this movement. If deep down you always knew something was wrong, always felt there was something beyond the illusion, then comment now. I always knew. But if you sense that something big is about to happen, that this revelation is only the beginning of something even greater, then comment. I already see the signs. Do not ignore this moment. This is not just another video. This is not just another theory. This is a calling. Now that you have seen, what will you do with this truth? Leave your mark. Write in the comments. The world needs to know that you have awakened. And if this message made sense to you, send this video to another chosen one before it's too late. Because when one awakens, many begin to awaken. And that is what they fear the most. Now that this truth has been revealed, you have a choice to make. You can simply move forward, keep this information to yourself, and pretend nothing happened. Or you can do what you were always meant to do. Share this truth with another chosen one. Think carefully. You know there are others like you. People who feel something is wrong, who see the signs, but who are still trapped in the illusion. They are waiting for an awakening, and you could be the key to it. You did not come this far by accident. You awakened because someone, at some point, left a sign for you to find. Now, it is your turn to do the same. Do not ignore this calling. The truth must spread. Send this video to someone who needs to see this now, because when one chosen one awakens, others begin to awaken too. And once this truth spreads, Nothing can stop it.